My name is Tristan Godwin, and I'm a blacksmith at Copper State Forge. We make skillets out of carbon steel, and a lot of folks have skillets made out of cast iron, they have Teflon, they have all these different things, and we've really centered on carbon steel because it's a wonderful material. It's less brittle than cast iron, so we can put long, elegant handles on them. So you can saute and cook. They're about 37% lighter than cast iron. And they give us the ability to form them in our shop. We don't have to cast them into a giant mold. We don't have to have a huge foundry. We just have 1,000 square feet here and some old tools that we've rebuilt and refurbished and made. And that allows us to form the carbon steel. Even though the name is carbon steel, which is kind of silly, there's less carbon than in cast iron, for instance. And that's what gives us the ability to be able to shape it right here. And when you cook on carbon steel, it's amazing. So to be able to cook in a skillet and not have things stick, we have a piece of metal, that's the skillet, and then we have some kind of organic layer above that. And that is what provides non-stick qualities. So when you buy a non-stick skillet from the store and they put Teflon or ceramic or something like that, eventually that's going to wear out. And when that wears out, your pan's going to stick and there's nothing you can do about it. You throw it away or recycle it, hopefully. But with carbon steel, if you somehow scratch your seasoning or you ruin it or your friend puts it in the dishwasher, you can clean it really well, wipe it down with a little bit of high smoke point oil like grapeseed oil, and you can build that seasoning back up and have another layer of non-stick capability and use that pan for the rest of your life. You won't ruin a carbon steel skillet, but you might ruin the seasoning. And that's what my dad always tells folks at the farmer's market. You can't ruin this skillet, but you can ruin the seasoning and you can always rebuild it and you're good to go. You can just keep cooking on it for the rest of your life. So seasoning is a really cool process. So, you know, like I mentioned before, Teflon, they use all kinds of chemicals to be able to put a layer of organic substrate on top of either aluminum or steel or something like that. And once it's gone, it's gone. But with our seasoning, we're taking grapeseed oil, we heat it to a pretty high temperature, about 525 degrees, and we let it soak into the pores, and it polymerizes. So essentially, that oil kind of turns into a type of plastic, a high heat, temperature resistant plastic. And you can just keep doing that forever on these skillets, and that's what makes them so special. Being a blacksmith nowadays is kind of difficult. Tools are limited. Ever since a certain TV show came on the air where they make knives, the tools have gotten very expensive. It's difficult to find some tools. It took us a long time to find the anvil I'm sitting on right here. And it was just a friend of a friend, and that's the only reason we were able to find it. It's difficult to find the tools, but once you find them, it's the most satisfying thing you can do. You know, I've worked in the corporate world for a long time, and I really enjoy it. Obviously, we're in Arizona, so the hardest part is when summer rolls around, and you work in front of a 2,400 degree fire. So I don't know why I chose to do that, but it's more of a passion than anything else. It's hot, it's dirty, and it's fun. And it's what I live for. You know, they always say, and we're kind of in the cooking world too, because we do all this, you know, you never trust a skinny cook. Well, you never trust a blacksmith with clean hands either. So I always have to tell people that at the market when I'm handing them this beautiful skillet and they see my hands and they're all grungy. I just have to go like, well, I also made this skillet and that's why they look this way. I'm sorry. People don't really understand what a blacksmith is. They just assume that all I do is sit around and make knives. And I've made a couple for myself and I don't make knives. Or maybe the other thing they think is that I do horseshoes. I'm a farrier. And I'm not that either. I'm not either one of those things. And what I do is something that I'm passionate about. And I love making things, and making dinner is making something. I like to put, you know, the food on the table. I like to go out, and whether I'm hunting or fishing or buying my vegetables at the farmer's market, I like to come home and create a meal. And so I kind of brought that passion into the blacksmith shop, where I've done metal fabrication for a long time and kind of turned that into making my own cookware, and it just kind of took off from there. It's been a lot of fun, and everybody seems to love it. You know, if you want to be a blacksmith, it takes determination. It's not something that happens overnight. The first time I heated some metal up and hit it with a hammer, it did not look anything like what I saw in my head. It was just totally a mess, and it took a lot of determination for me to really figure it out. So patience is also a big part of that. You know, it took a lot of watching YouTube videos. John Switzer is one of my favorites. he runs Black Bear Forge. He's amazing. He kind of taught me to be a blacksmith, him and an assortment of others. I've never actually stood in the room with another professional blacksmith who does this for a living. I've learned all just by watching and reading books and viewing videos and all those types of things, and it's just kind of developed over time. But definitely patience is probably the biggest part of it, because it doesn't happen quickly. To be a good blacksmith, you really just need to be able to put everything out of your mind and focus on your work. And it's so easy sometimes with things nowadays to be distracted by your phone or to want to answer a call or check out Facebook or Instagram, and I check that into my office. I have to put it aside. I just have to be able to focus on what I'm doing. So you need to be able to stay on task at all times, because if you lose track of what you're doing, and this sounds crazy, but we make skewers, right? And people love our skewers. And we've probably made skewers 100 times. And every time it's time to make a new skewer, you go, what length do I cut the metal to before I start? And we can never figure that out. So it's, somebody who can really stick with it and can take good notes and journal and keep records. Even though I'm hitting metal with a hammer, records are one of the most important things that we have. We have to keep track of everything that we do, because it needs to be the same every time. When I was making things for myself, it could be whatever I wanted. But when someone wants to walk up at the farmer's market and buy a skillet just like the one they saw last week that has already been sold, that new one better look just like it. So there's a lot of that goes into it. They just assume that, if you're a blacksmith, that maybe you didn't have many other lots in life. Like, who wants to swing a big heavy hammer in a burning hot forge in Arizona, get dirty all day long, wear yourself out, put stress on your body? Well, that's not the case. I do it because I love it. I still have a full-time job, but this is my passion. And I love the folks that I work with, and I enjoy my day job, but this is what I live for. So a misconception I think that a lot of people have is that, this is something that you would do because you couldn't do anything else. And that's quite the opposite for me. In fact, I wonder every day why I'm not doing something else. And then I have to remind myself that I really do love doing this. So, I've been doing metal fabrication for a really long time. I was in school full-time and needed a way to basically pay my bills. I'm married, have 3 kids. My wife and I decided later in life to go back to school. And I worked for Grand Canyon University, and I needed to supplement my income. So I had a welder that I had purchased just because I'd watched some YouTube videos on welding, and I decided I was going to be a kettle corn vendor. So my dad and I built 2 kettle corn trailers, and through welding and grinding and cutting, I discovered that I love metalwork, and it's been a huge passion of mine. In fact, this shop that we're in used to be a place where we did kettle corn years ago, and since then it's evolved into this giant metalworking shop, and it's just kind of taken over our lives. And so after doing kettle corn for a while, I just decided as a hobby I wanted to get into blacksmithing. I watched some videos, I'd seen Forged in Fire. I thought, boy, that would be really cool. So built a forge. Found a soft piece of mild steel that I pretended was an anvil to bang on, and started heating things up and shaping it. And not long after I started just messing around, I built my first skillet, and it's very crude, but it got the job done. And I took it home, and everybody loved it. So we'd have friends over when we were entertaining or having a party, and I'd whip that pan out and I'd use it on the barbecue, and then I'd use it on the stove, and everyone would ask me, where did you get that? I'm like, well, I made it, actually. And one thing led to another, and over the course of 2 or 3 years, I kept thinking about it, and I built up this metalworking shop with my dad, and it just seemed like the next step was, hey, let's make some of these skillets that everybody says they love so much and see if they're willing to buy them. And they are. So that's where we are now, is making these skillets and other cookware. So.
As an independent team of filmmakers, we love producing documentaries for artisans of all trades, honoring skill, passion, and determination. So whether you're a garage baker, homegrown mycologist, backyard farmer, or off-grid homesteader, send us a message and share your story with the world.
There's a million things that we can make. If you get on Etsy or anywhere else, you can see that there's other folks that maybe make carbon steel skillets. There's folks who make all kinds of things out of metal. And we have a CNC plasma cutter. We could make signs and probably make a lot more money just selling our signs. And we just have a real passion for cooking in my family. That's important to us. My brother is a food photographer. Like, we've always had Sunday home cooked meals every week, and everyone, literally fought over who would get like grandma's cast iron. So that was a big deal for us. So when we were thinking about the different things that we enjoyed doing ourselves, that's what we decided to make. We're like, we want to create something that is a heritage item, something that you can use your entire life and leave to your children. We want to make something, and it seems kind of silly because eventually that kind of limits your customers, because you only have to sell them a couple skillets and they're gone. So we have to diversify a little bit, but that's our main focus, because we just want people, when they go to their kitchen every day and they walk up to their stove, that they have one of our skillets sitting there and they can use it for everything they cook. It's so versatile. You can use it in the barbecue, on a grill, in a smoker, in the oven, on the stove, induction, glass top, gas. You can use it anywhere. You can use it over an open fire while you're camping. So we wanted something that was versatile, something that we personally loved, and that we knew that we could perfect because we know how it should work. So that's why we started making the skillets. And so far, so good. I mean, we're learning a little bit every single day, and we're always constantly making improvements, but I think we're on the right track. We've put a lot of work into the ergonomics of our skillets. When you look around, you see all these straight handles like on cast iron, and they're utilitarian, they're usable, right? So we've gone through several different stages in our skillets because we form them right here. It's not a big deal for us to just do a quick experiment. Hey, well, what if the handle was shaped up on the back and fullered down, so like a curve on the front for your thumb? Well, we tried that one day, and it made the most comfortable handle that we think we can develop here. I say that now, but who knows? Maybe we'll find something else in the future. So we're able to, because we make them in-house, make those quick little changes and see what works best. So that sets us apart. We're able to make changes on the fly and be able to do exactly what our customers want. Also, when it comes to seasoning our skillets, if you've bought cast iron in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's so gritty inside. It's not smooth at all, that it's almost impossible to build up a good seasoning on that. So what we do is when we form the steel, it starts off actually smoother than you want it to be for a good seasoning to stick to it. So we went through all different types of sandblasting and different grits of sandpaper, and we narrowed it down to be able to use a sandpaper in the skillet that'll make it smooth enough that you can easily build a seasoning, but has enough tooth or grit to it that it will hold on to that seasoning and it'll last a long time. It doesn't flake off or fall off. Of course, while you're cooking, through your whole experience with your skillet, it's going to change colors. You might lose some seasoning if you forget it on the stove, or if your kids drop it in the sink with a bunch of water and dirty dishes. And that's fine. You can always go back and re-season it, and it'll always have that grit and that texture to it that we put on there to hold on to that seasoning, so that way you can use that. And more than anything else, it works incredibly well for cooking, but we wanted something that looked beautiful also. It's function first and then form, but we're able to put little dents where they need to be to make the pan perfectly round. Well, it turns out that when we hit the pan with the hammer and put those dents in it, and we season it, they turn different colors in different areas, and people love it, and they think it's beautiful. It doesn't affect the performance of the pan at all. It works just as well as if it was stamped out in a factory, and I would argue better, just because we've had our hands on it. When we sit down and we make our skillets, every single one we made with our hands right here. We ran our fingers around the top of that pan and made sure that everything felt smooth and nice. We've ground that handle down after we've forged it and made sure it just sits at the right angle for you to be able to saute your vegetables or sear your steak. So those are just some of the things that make it stand out. And we want people to know that we made it. And so we put a little piece of copper right on the handle, and we put the state of Arizona on it. And that's why we're Copper State forged. Not because our skillets are made out of copper, they're carbon steel, but because we're in the Copper State. I love making things with my hands because when I'm done, I just feel like an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. I've done a lot of different things in my career. I've been in construction, higher ed, all different types of things. And when you're done at the end of the day, like in my most recent position, you go like, I worked hard and I provided a service, but I didn't provide anything tangible. And when I'm done working for the day, I want to look over and go like, I built 3 skillets And that gives me a ton of satisfaction knowing that people are going to use these almost every day for the rest of their life. That's what brings me joy, is knowing that other people are going to have joy from what we're doing here. So that's the most rewarding part of this whole job, and what I do here is just being able to create those things, knowing that people will enjoy them and use them. Perseverance, patience. Those are some of the things I've learned being a blacksmith. I mean, it's not easy, you know, when you can go get a job and you know you can make a reasonable amount of money and make a living, and instead you show up to this dirty shop and you make stuff and you hope that people like it and that they buy it. So I think what's important is that we're able to do that and to push through the difficult times. And when we go to farmers markets, we don't sell a skillet every week. Sometimes we sell a few. Sometimes there's a drought. You know, it just kind of depends. So it is difficult sometimes knowing that there are other avenues that you could go out and support your family. But this is what I'm passionate about. So this is what I want to do. I'm just trying to do everything I can to make this work. And it has so far, you know. And I think that's what really drives me. There's a lot of ways to get a non-stick coating, but the basics behind it are you have a piece of metal, whether it's aluminum or steel or whatever that happens to be. And on top of that, they put some kind of organic layer. So if you buy Teflon, they use some chemicals. Teflon's not necessarily toxic, but what they use to make it is, right? So it's not something you keep in your house. When it wears out, the pan's over with. There's nothing you can do with that pan. So you have to buy a new one. And we just want to prevent some of that waste, right? So ceramic, once again, it lasts a little bit longer than Teflon probably, but once that surface is worn, you're not going to have any non-stick qualities left, or very little. So once again, you've got to replace that again. So what do people do with these? I posted something on Instagram the other day where I walked into a thrift store and there were literally like 70 scratched up, non-usable Teflon and ceramic pans. And I thought to myself, like, all of these pans were consumed by these people and they all just went out and bought another one to replace this. And they could have bought one 10-inch carbon steel skillet and had it the rest of their lives. But instead, they think, oh, I don't know if I want to make an investment, because if we could give our pans away, we would, but this is how we support our families. So we have to charge a fair amount for the amount of time that we put into these. And they think that maybe that might be a little bit much for that type of investment. But they'll go spend $50 every 2 years on a new nonstick over at the big box store and then have to toss it out and get another one. Well, no one cares what happened to grandma's Teflon. You know, who cares about that? They want to know where her cast iron or her carbon steel went. That's what we're trying to replicate here. We want that heritage quality. So our surface can be completely redone. If you were to scratch your seasoning, if you were to accidentally leave it in the sink with dirty dishes, your friend does you a favor and puts it in the dishwasher, which you don't want to do, you can just take your pan, scrub it clean, recoat it with oil, and create that non-stick surface again. And when I say non-stick, it can be. But there is a learning curve. You know, if you were to just take a burning hot pan and throw something into it with a piece of meat or vegetables with no oil or tallow or lard or anything like that, no fat, it's going to stick probably, you know. So there is a little bit of a learning curve there. But once you develop the skills to use your pan, which doesn't take that long, you'll never go back. And one of the testaments to that I have is if you walk into a commercial kitchen at a nice big restaurant, what are they using? They use carbon steel. And why do they use that? Because it doesn't wear out. Their cooks can cook all day long in this carbon steel. You can use metal utensils if you want to. You can take it from the stove and put it in the oven to finish that steak off. You can put it up in the salamander. You can put it in the smoker if you're at a smokehouse. You can use it anywhere that you want to cook. And you know that if anything happens to it, you just re-season it and use it again. And so for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, it just makes sense. And I realize that our skillets are really an investment. And the folks that have bought them love them. And they've gotten to learn how to use them. And that's important, because once you've done that, you're good forever. You don't have to buy any more skillets. One of each size, and you're good to go. I mean, there's so much you can do with a 10-inch carbon steel skillet. It can replace 90% of what you have in your kitchen right now. even if you have a large family. It's amazing what you can do with that one skillet. We do a lot of different things here in our shop, and while the main thing that we do is blacksmithing, and that's just heating metal and forging it with an anvil and a hammer. Everything that we make at some point is formed using forging, by heating it up and banging on it, essentially. So it is something that could have been done hundreds of years ago, right? And was, starting with the Bronze Age. And so what we've done here is we've had to find some ways to kind of speed that process up. So my very first skillet that I made with a makeshift anvil made out of mild steel, which was not very hard, and a cheap hammer that I had bought. And I still use that skillet, and it works great. But to be able to really perfect our skillets, we've used some different technology. We use a hydraulic press that we crank with our arm to be able to press that puck down into the bottom die and give the basic form of our pans. But then, of course, as soon as we're done with that, it's right back to the anvil, where we have to hammer out all those wrinkles. And we have a CNC plasma cutter that we built about 1.5 years ago. And we could cut all these blanks out by hand, or we could chisel cut them. There's a lot of different ways that we could cut them, but we've chosen to pick our battles. And so getting a nice round circular pan, that's important to our customers. They want something that's round and usable for when they saute and when they're cooking. So we found a way to use our CNC plasma cutter to cut our blanks out. So that has helped us tremendously to be able to keep up with our demand from our customers too, and to meet their level of satisfaction. So those are the two biggest pieces of technology that we use here, is the CNC plasma cutter, hydraulic press. For the most part, everything else is the same way as you'd be doing it hundreds of years ago. We do use a propane forge. So that is one benefit that we have. And in Arizona, it's kind of necessary. The building that we're in, we don't have the ventilation to run coal or coke or charcoal for our forge, so we do use propane. And that is a huge blessing for us to be able to use that, because we can turn it on and off as necessary. It doesn't create a lot of problems as far as burning. Coal and coke and things like that kind of burn dirty, and they make a mess around the shop, and people don't like breathing that in, and propane actually burns very clean. So that gives us an opportunity to not only help the environment, but to be able to use something that's really efficient for us. And all propane is just a refined natural gas anyways. It's already in our environment. So that's another piece of technology that we use here. But still, 90% of what we do is just heating it up and hitting it with a hammer. And I could get the same result, or very similar, not using the technology that we have here, but it would slow us down so much that it would be difficult for us to keep up with our customers. And you know, the parts that really matter to us, the handles being hand forged before we rivet them on, the marks that are left behind when we forge the actual skillet base, like those are witness marks of what this pan went through for us to be able to create it for our customers. Those are the things that are important to them, and they're important to us too. It leaves our signature on every single one. So while we do use some technology, we're really just perfecting, an art that's hundreds, 1,000 years old. So, being a modern blacksmith, we're bootstrapping things here. We basically make our tools, or we buy used tools. We rarely, often, we don't buy new stuff, like maybe consumables, belts for our grinders, things like that. But this anvil I'm sitting on is from the 1880s. The hydraulic press that we have sitting behind us that we'll use later, it's probably from the 60s or the 70s, and it came to us broken, and we rebuilt it. So all the stands under all of our tools, we built ourselves to our own specifications so they could be the right height for us to be comfortable while we work. So being a small business and just kind of starting this business, we've had to not cut corners, but buy things that we could afford and restore them ourselves and make them ourselves. We're working on a hydraulic press that's run by an electric motor instead of our arm. And that's going to save tons of time and effort and energy, and the product's going to be the same. We still have to hand hammer that as soon as it comes out of the hydraulic press. It's just going to save our bodies a little bit. Basically, everything we see around here has been recycled, repurposed, rebuilt, bought for cheap off of Craigslist. We had to put it back together because it was a basket case when it arrived. So those are some of the challenges we've had, is just making what we can afford by making money through the business. We haven't really brought any money from our own pockets. We just started small, sold what we were making, and we're just able to build from there. Even our shop, we've been able to pay for the shop, the space that we're in, just off of what we've sold. And that's been important to us, because if I were to take money out of my home budget and bring it to my shop, I might be divorced right now. We've got families to support. So there's a lot of other parts that go into running a small business, figuring out how to charge the correct sales tax. Like, this is all new stuff to me. I chose to do a profession that's, old-time profession, right? I'm a blacksmith. But to be able to sell my goods, I need to be on Instagram. I need to be on Facebook. I have to build a website. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, I'm not good at those things. I am good with metal, but I've had to kind of work on those things and move in that direction so that I could sell my old-time stuff. It's a really interesting bubble to try to learn, two different things from different eras and combine them to make a successful business. And that's probably been one of the more difficult parts, is just learning all the technology side. Luckily, we have really good friends and family that have helped us along the way. Like our plasma cutter, I don't know how to code. I don't know anything about that stuff. I can build the frame. I can build the water tank. I can build all the hardware that goes into it. When it comes to software and stuff like that, I have a cousin, Ben, who he builds 3D printers, so he knows about that. So we brought him in, and he helped us out. So there's just a lot of folks that have come through to help us to be able to grow our small business. And, it's rewarding for us to see it grow, but I think it's rewarding for them too, because they've put a lot of time and effort into helping this thing to grow and nurturing it. And I hope our success makes them feel good too. I think it does. So there are some marked differences between carbon steel and cast iron. So the carbon steel that we use is actually a low carbon content, and that makes it malleable. So we're able to hammer on it, heat it up, hammer on it. It won't crumble away. It'll bend and fold and go to the places that we need it to make our products. A cast iron, it's actually higher in carbon, and so it makes it more brittle. Carbon's super hard. So when you add carbon to iron, you get steel. Right? That's one of the facets of creating an alloy for steel. And when you drop cast iron, there's a good chance you can break it, because it is so fragile. That's why when you look at a cast iron pan, they have those small kind of stumpy handles on them. If they were to make a nice long handle that would work well for sauteing and things like that, and you drop it, there's a really good chance that it'll fall right off. It'll just break, and there's nothing you can do at that point. You might be able to have somebody repair it or braze it back together, but it's a whole debacle, and you can't really weld cast iron, and there's a lot that goes into that. So while I love my cast iron, and I still use it, I really think that carbon steel is the way to go, just because if you drop a carbon steel pan, and let's say that you do drop it right on the handle, and it bends a little, well, you can pick it up and then muscle it right back into place, and it's good as new again. It's so simple. You're not going to break it. It is prone to rusting, just like cast iron, but with a seasoning on it, you don't have to worry about any of that. All you have to do is when you're done cooking, you wipe a little bit of oil on it, and you put it in the cupboard, and it's good to go the next time you need it. So when you're finished cooking with your cast iron, it's simple to clean up. You literally just put a little hot water in it, wipe it out, make sure there's nothing stuck to the sides of it, and then you can go ahead and just put a very light film of oil in there just to make sure that everything stays good, no rust forms. If you have seasoning, you're not going to get it anyways, but adding that little bit of oil just adds a layer of protection against anything else happening to that pan while you're not using it. If you're using it every day, you probably don't even have to worry about that, because you're oiling it during the cooking process. So it's really not even an issue. And so there are some intricacies of taking care of carbon steel, but it's very simple. You can watch a million YouTube videos on exactly how to care for it, and you can check out our website too. We have some instructions on how to do it, but it really comes as second nature after you've had the pan for a couple of weeks. It'll just be like you've had it your whole life. There are a lot of really high quality carbon steel skillets that you can get from the internet. You might be able to find them on Amazon. I think you can even buy one now at Walmart. And there are some differences. I don't know all the differences between theirs and ours, but I do know that from the ones I've purchased in the past, they're a little bit thinner metal, and they're stamped out in a factory. So we're not really sure who made it. We're not sure where it came from exactly. We don't know where that steel came from. And yes, it'll probably perform okay, but there are some unknowns there. With ours, we buy our steel right down the street. We bring it here and we take care of it with our own hands. We've built this from the bottom up. So we know that our skillets are thick enough that they're not going to warp, but they're thin enough that they're not going to be too heavy. we know that we put a safe nonstick coating on ours, and we pre-season all of our skillets. So when you buy a skillet from us, it's ready to go. Where a lot of those that you buy online, yeah, you might get a good deal on it, or you think you are, but you have to season it yourself. And that initial seasoning can be a little more difficult than you would think. After that, it's simple to take care of. We do all that for you. We don't want our customers to have to go home and worry about how to just fry some eggs the next morning after they buy it. We want them to go home with a product that's ready to use. And I think most importantly, it's beautiful. So we know it's going to function well because we've done all this research. We've figured out how we want to build these skillets, how the seasoning sticks, how to polymerize the oils. And now you can look at something that go, hey, this was built by hand and it's beautiful too. Not only does it function well, but I can hang this on my wall and be proud of it when people come over. We have folks all the time, they want to buy the rack that we hang them from that we made so they can put their skillets up on their wall so they can show them off to their friends. You're not showing off your Amazon skillet to your friends. That doesn't give you that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. No one wants to know if grandma's going to leave her Amazon skillet to you when she passes. No, you want a cool, beautiful heirloom product. And that's what we're giving folks. Now, if you can't afford to get one of our skillets right away, by all means, go pick one up. Go buy a carbon steel skillet that you can't afford. And it might serve you well. And when you can, try one of ours and you'll see the difference. I do this because I love it. That's why I show up here every day. You know, I work a full-time job and then I come here. And I put in probably more hours here than I do at my full-time job. Between that and this, it feels like it's 8 days a week because markets on the weekends, forge until late at night, getting up early to get my day job done. I only do this because I love it. I don't do this for the money. I can make money a bevy of different ways, but I just love making things that other people enjoy. That's what I like. I like making quality products. I want to make things right here in Goodyear, Arizona that people can take home with them and have for the rest of their lives. And there's not many things that you can buy that you'll keep forever. You know, most things that we have are consumer items. You might have it for a few years and it won't last. I can tell you that if you buy one of our skillets, you will use it your entire life. And that's important to me. I wanted to create something that was heirloom quality. There were other things that we could make, but what other things in your life that I could make in my shop do you use every day? Well, you can use this skillet every single day. You use it to feed your family. You use it to feed your friends. And I think that those are important things and that people need to be able to take charge of their kitchen and be able to use quality products and, you know, protect the environment by not buying and throwing away and consuming more than they need when you could just buy one of our skillets. This sounds like a shameless plug, and it kind of is. That's not my intention. You know, I just want people to understand that there's other ways to be able to cook your food that's healthier and cooler, smarter, less wasteful. And we're one of those avenues. You know, we provide that for people. So what's really also another huge benefit to using carbon steel is it's super temperature resistant. So you can go super high heats. In fact, we are now making a really cool roasting pan that people have been bothering us to build for them because they want to cook in their wood-burning pizza ovens. We're talking 600, 700, 800 degrees. Our skillets will resist that. So super high heat is perfect for browning and searing, and carbon steel literally is the best metal for that. It actually has better heat transfer than cast iron does. And you can heat it faster because it's a little bit lighter, so you can have more control over the temperature. It cools a little faster, so when you make that adjustment on the knob, it realizes it faster and your food cooks accordingly. So you have more control over what you're doing. A lot of folks don't even realize that you can change the knob and notice like a change right away. You know, it's not even part of their cooking habits because they don't realize that that exists. So when you're searing meats, when you want to get that nice, beautiful brown texture, carbon steel is the way to go. Add a little bit of oil, you throw that steak in there, you let it sear and sizzle, you add a little bit of garlic, thyme. It's the best steak you'll ever eat. And the cool part about it also is if you want to do like a reverse sear, you can sear it, throw it right in the oven. Same pan, you don't have to change anything because our pans can go anywhere. They literally can be cooked on any surface and in any way.
Hire us to tell your story. As an independent team of filmmakers, we love producing documentaries for artisans of all trades, honoring skill, passion, and determination.
The fruits of our labor literally creates happiness.
Founded in 2020, we harness our collective experience and enthusiasm for storytelling to deliver content that resonates with viewers on every level.
Think big and think outside of the box.
We avoid the constant noise of clickbait news and outrage headlines, instead crafting more intimate narratives that touch on the purpose of life itself. Stories that not only inform but also inspire, whether it's the art of agriculture, the science of fermentation, an innovative garage startup, or the intricacies of off-grid living. We're here to explore it all and invite you to join us in the discovery.
You're just working with what you have at hand instead of having unrealistic expectations.
We know the world is brimming with hidden stories waiting to be told. These are tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
The biggest thing is to realize that there's nothing that you can't do.
Embodying the American spirit that with hard work, dreams really can come true. So whether you're a garage baker, homegrown mycologist, backyard farmer, or off-grid homesteader, send us a message and share your story with the world.